Hi everyone, I'm Haley Alvarez-Lauto, and today I am sharing the story behind my documentary titled Full Circle, which tells my adoption story and follows my return to China to reconnect with my birth culture and begin searching for my birth family. I'd also like to thank my professor, Professor Poyster, as my advisor for this project in the Film and TV department. The main question I explored is how do international adoptees navigate dual cultural identities and challenges of being in two worlds? I'm a Chinese adoptee, and I was raised in the US, and I'm also a film and television and journalism major here at BU, so I explored this question by creating a personal documentary. I've always known I was adopted, but I didn't always know how much I wanted to understand my past. I was adopted at 11 months old from Guangxi, China, and was raised in Florida to a loving, multicultural family. So pictured over there is my found site in Guangxi, China, and on the left, on your left, is my family photo as well. My mom is Cuban, my dad is Italian Irish, and I have an older sister who's also adopted from a different province in China. We also have deep ties to New Orleans as well, as that's where my parents grew up, went to college, and most of my extended family lives in New Orleans to this day. This mix of culture has shaped who I am, but there's always been this quiet part of me that wondered about the life I left behind in China. In this documentary, I interviewed my parents to retell my adoption story and traveled back to China for the first time. This documentary was my way of confronting all the questions I've had my entire life, face first, and using everything I've learned at BU to do it. So, as I was saying, after 21 years, I made my way back to China for the first time. I traveled with my mom, and it was definitely a very special trip. We left on Christmas Day in December of 2024, and here's a visual of what my trip looked like. We started in Beijing, which is the capital city of China, and that was my first exposure to culture in mainland China. I am not a Mandarin speaker, so it was definitely very difficult with the language barrier. Not only practically, because travel logistics and just ordering vegetarian food at the restaurant, but also emotionally, as I definitely had a big sense of imposter syndrome. From Beijing, we went to Xi'an, one of China's oldest cities. It was at the end of the Silk Road, so there was a distinct Muslim influence, which we wanted to explore farther. From Xi'an, we went to Chengdu, which is the farthest west in mainland China we traveled to. Chengdu is in the Sichuan province, which is home to the pandas, and all my life I've been dying to see a panda in real life, and I cried seeing the pandas, and it was the highlight of my trip. From Chengdu, we actually went to Xishuangbanna. It is an autonomous region in Yunnan province, and I'm actually 80% Chinese dye based on my 23andMe report I did in middle school. So that was definitely a shock when all my life I was told, yeah, you're Chinese, yeah, you're Chinese. Well, yes, you're Chinese, but you're also 80% Chinese dye. And the largest population of the Chinese dye minority group lives here in Xishuangbanna. So it was very meaningful for me and my mom to explore the culture there. Trips keeps going. So from Xishuangbanna, we went finally to the province I was born in. Guilin is the city we started with. It's very beautiful. It's known for its very mountainous region, beautiful landscapes. And growing up, I would Google Guangxi, China, as that's what was listed on my adoption paperwork, and I'd always see these beautiful landscapes. So seeing the beautiful nature of my birth region was extremely impactful. And finally, from Guilin, we went to Nanning, which is the capital city of the province I was born in. It's where my orphanage is and where my found site is as well. And I also started my birth family search here. The trip itself was life-changing. It certainly wasn't easy traveling across China with my mom and with camera equipment, but it was the best way I felt to keep the story authentic. And my mom came with me. She supported me emotionally, and also she did a bit of filming herself, calling herself my human tripod. We planned logistics carefully, but I also tried to let myself be open to the moments that weren't planned. I used observational documentary methods here when filming, and I tried to not capture just what I was seeing, but also what it felt like to be there, tasting the food, hearing the language all around me, and watching people go about their lives in a place that could have been mine. It all made me think about the version of me that could have existed if I never left China. So I did a birth family search, which was a bit of a surprise for me personally, since growing up, I never felt emotionally ready to kind of explore that part of my history. But as I got closer to leaving for China, something in me shifted, and I realized I had to try. If it took me 21 years to go back to China, at some point it might be too late, and we were teetering on the edge of too late. Spoiler alert, I didn't locate my birth parents, but I did find someone who might have been the man who discovered me the day I was abandoned. He became an integral part of my journey, and speaking with him, and with many people from my birth region, it was incredibly emotional seeing where I came from. So Mr. Fong is the guy who thinks he found me outside of the found site picture on the left, and he's on the right with the dog, and that's us. Doing this documentary alone had meant I had to be my own director, producer, camera person, and editor. This was the biggest film I was trying to partake. I was aiming for it to be 30 to 40 minutes, and I shot and directed in everything myself. I edited it in Premiere Pro, which can be definitely very challenging, but it also allowed me to build the film layer by layer. I also faced a lot of challenges and learned from my mistakes. I had to really hone in on my interview techniques as I interviewed both my mom, my dad, my sister. Speaking of learning from mistakes, this was the interview shot I did in February of 2024 with my older sister, Jade. It's an ugly shot, we can be honest. There's too much headroom, way too much space over her head. There's a big ugly shadow behind her due to a super unflattering light source. The axis is completely skewed, and don't even mention the closet door that's actually visible in the frame. So I took the techniques that I've learned in the past year and I re-interviewed her in March of 2025. I think we can all agree this is a bit more aesthetically pleasing to the eye. This documentary was the hardest and most rewarding project I've ever done. I wore every hat, so producing, directing, and editing, as I mentioned, and I learned to trust my instincts and pivot when things didn't go to plan. But more than anything, this film taught me to sit with uncertainty. I didn't find all the answers I wanted, but I found something just as valuable: clarity, strength, and a sense of place. I grew so much, not just as a filmmaker, but also as a person. And I learned that telling your story can be one of the bravest and most meaningful things you'll ever do. So some pictures of me in Beijing. We went to the hospital in my found site, as well as we visited my orphanage, and I got to speak with some of the nannies who were there. So this black screen is actually a video. It is a trailer. While the final film is still in post-production, not quite ready for public consumption, but should be very, very soon, I have a trailer here to kind of show you a glimpse of the experiences I had while in China. Thank you. Hopefully it plays.
Jade, is this pretty cool? That's your baby sister.
I was adopted from China when I was just a baby. For most of my life, that was the beginning and the end of the story. But the older I got, the more I started to wonder, where did I come from, really? What was left behind?
Wait. Find plane, got a background?
It's 9 p.m., I'm waiting for my lift, and I'm all packed and ready to go. So I went back to where it all began, 21 years later, traveling across China to reconnect with my birth culture. We've made it to Beijing. Hey, Mom. Hi. Being in China as a Chinese-American adoptee was overwhelming in ways I didn't expect. I looked like everyone around me, but I felt like an outsider. At the same time, there were moments that made me feel strangely at home. The rhythm of the language, the smell of the food, the faces in the crowd. It was like catching glimpses of a life that could have been mine. I wasn't just visiting. I was trying to understand the culture I was born into but had never truly known. This is a story about searching, not just for people, but for place, for history, for truth, and about finding peace in the process. This journey didn't give me all the answers I thought I needed, but it gave me something else: moments of connection, glimpses of belonging, and a deeper understanding of who I am. And somehow, through every conversation, every step, every piece of the past I uncovered, it all started to feel like coming full circle. Thank you. That's it.
Any questions for Haley?
Hi, Haley. Great presentation. I was wondering, like, when you were talking to the locals, you said that you don't speak Chinese. Like, how did you get past that, like, language barrier?
Yeah, great question. So for most of the trip in the first few cities, I was more just exploring Chinese culture. My mom and I did it by ourselves, so we utilized our smartphones, Google Translate, Baidu Translate turned out to be a lot more helpful, and really just did our best in terms of like Google Translate. There are some really nice features. In terms of speaking at the orphanage, speaking with people from my found site, that we actually hired a translator for because we felt like there is no way that Google Translate was going to get us to those nuances. So we had hired a guide who took us around both to the orphanage, to the found site, and then he was doing most of the translating. Mr. Fung, actually, too, he speaks Cantonese, so he was speaking Cantonese to many of the villagers in my found site and around my found site, and then he was speaking Cantonese, telling it to our translator in Mandarin, and our Mandarin translator was telling us in English. So definitely could have been a couple lost of translations, but that's how we did it.
Hi, wonderful presentation, great trailer. I was wondering if you plan on submitting this to festivals or your plans for distribution and kind of what you hope viewers get out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to submit to festivals, not quite at a festival-ready submission, especially in terms of like music. That music was totally torn from like Zap music, which festivals don't want to hear. Would love to enter it. I'm shooting for a 30 to 40-minute feature, so this will be the longest film I'm trying to create. It's partially there. We're still working on the rest. In terms of distribution, it'll go on my website, of course, but a lot of film festivals as well require it to be like they have the first initial view of it. So depending on what festivals I submit to, it may or may not land on YouTube or website. And in terms of what I want people to get out of this film, I think growing up, especially with an older sister who was also adopted, and I went to like adopt-teen camps, which are camps for adopted kids, so they actually have those. I wanted to just share what it's like to go and do this birth family search. I think it's really, really challenging and not always shared in media. A lot of times it's made by filmmakers themselves, but like not the adoptee as a filmmaker. So I wanted to give that perspective as I'm a filmmaker, but I'm also an adoptee, and show that experience in a more like observational documentary style.
Of all of the hats that you had to wear, like producing, directing, editing, what was your favorite and why?
Ooh, I love filming, like in terms of like holding the camera and filming. I think that was my biggest challenge when I got into the edit bay was I have great shots of things, but my mom's only my mom and she doesn't love filming as much as I do. So I had great shots of like B-roll and things like that, endless hours of B-roll, but sometimes not enough of myself just because I enjoy being behind the camera so much. So I definitely say behind the camera.
Awesome. Great job, Haley.